Dear aspiring academics, welcome to the Academic Diaries, where we will talk about the different journeys people in different levels of academia take to become fully fledged professionals in their fields. My name is Itzel. I'm a third-year physics PhD student at the University of Virginia. As a beginner academic, I am curious about the paths people take to grow their careers. I hope that by asking questions to interesting people, we can learn more about all the options that we are, for now, blind to. So sit down, or walk, or wash your dishes, or maybe procrastinate that thesis you may be writing, and enjoy the chat. Today, I will interview Professor Chris Neu. He is a professor at the University of Virginia working in high-energy physics as a part of the CMS experiment at the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. He's currently the director of graduate studies in the physics department. For the unaware, that means he listens to all the graduate students and aims to give us advice, encouragement, and orientation while we are students here. Please welcome Dr. Chris Neu.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Professor Neu, for being a part of the podcast. As you know, I want to learn more about your story and how you got into being a professor specializing in high-energy physics. Every story has a beginning, so how about we start with yours? When did you become interested in physics?
I can remember I took my first physics class when I was a junior in high school, and I really liked science as a child. I wanted to be an astronaut. That wasn't something that drove me, but I remember that as a memory. And I was interested in science as a grade schooler, and then went to high school and started in biology in a freshman year, and that didn't really do much for me. Chemistry in my sophomore year, I was inspired by a really good teacher, but I didn't really like the content very much. But I was a really good student, and I was eager to take physics in junior year because it's widely known as the hardest science. And I was looking for a challenge, and that was challenging, and I had a great teacher. I had the privilege of having that teacher for 2 years, and so that was quite a formative experience for me. I remember it was 1994, and I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I went to high school in the city of Chicago. In the morning, we would listen to WGN radio for the news and the weather and all that stuff. We would read the Chicago Tribune before school. And I remember there was a news item that there was a discovery of a new fundamental particle, and it was called the top quark. And it was discovered at a U.S. national lab that was also in the suburbs of Chicago. And I thought that was cool. I didn't know anything about particle physics, but what was interesting to me was this was a discovery that made international news, and it happened right up the road, 30 minutes away, but really right up the road from where I lived. And I thought that was cool, and I thought, man, if I could do something someday that they'd talk about on WGN News or write about in the Chicago Tribune, and I could do that in my hometown, essentially, God, that would be pretty cool. That discovery was made at this national lab called Fermilab, Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory, and that ended up being where I got my start in professional physics.
Mind blown.
That's part of my origin story, I'd say. I went on to college, and I went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, very good school, and great in science and engineering. And I majored in physics and math. Part of my choice of physics was because I was interested in science, but also, being very candid, it was a bit of an ego choice. I knew I was really smart. I was the valedictorian of my high school. There were very high expectations for me, and I thought, if I'm so smart, I should go and do the hardest major at university. Just being very honest, part of the choice was driven by ego. But the other side of ego is you can get very rapidly humbled and study at the advanced undergraduate level, even the introductory undergraduate level. There were humbling experiences right away. I came down to earth pretty rapidly in my first and second years at Illinois.
I can relate to that. I also chose physics because I was like, oh, I'm really smart. And then first year, I was like, I don't think I'm as smart as I thought.
How did that make you feel?
It was terrifying. I still have the fear every day that I just got lucky and nothing I have done is my own doing. It was all just some really crazy stroke of luck. And that's something that I have had to work through and I continue to work through. But since I started university, it was very difficult for me to build my confidence again. How did it feel for you?
I had a worry that maybe I peaked intellectually in high school, which as a 19-year-old is maybe not a really welcome emotion to feel. And then I remember maybe it was sophomore or junior year, maybe it was sophomore year, but I was still doing okay, but I was not having the kind of success that I expected. And so I was looking for off-ramps. And I remember I read in a newspaper that at the time, the mayor of Nashville, Tennessee, had a Bachelor of Science degree in physics. And so I thought, oh man, that's great, because now I have an example of someone who can go forward and get a bachelor's degree in physics and then go do something important like be the mayor of a city. That buoyed me a little bit at a time when I was really struggling and I didn't see a trajectory. I was starting to doubt that my trajectory would be an academic physicist like those I had been surrounded by. At Illinois, it's kind of comical, or I don't know if it's irony or what, but looking back at the trajectory that I ended up going down, what you found comforting at that moment.
This guy might not think, oh, my bachelor's in physics is going to make this undergraduate continue with this career that eventually led you to a professorship. He had no idea, but it helped you so much.
Right.
Was there anybody in the university that also helped you out?
Yes. Every success that I've ever had, I credit to having excellent teachers and really profoundly positive experiences through excellent mentors. And I'm very lucky to have had a few of those. In my junior year, I was alerted to a summer research program at Fermilab, at that lab that had inspired me as a 15 or 16-year-old kid to even think about physics as a major. I pursued that and I was accepted into that program. I remember, and again, this is the time where I was doubting what I was going to do. I remember the night before my first day in the internship program, research program at Fermilab, I was hanging out with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And I remember saying like, I don't want to go. I think I can go and get my old part-time job from last summer. It's a long commute. Who knows? Maybe I should just not do this. And she said, no, you've got to try. You've got to do this. Who knows what you might experience or what you might see. And she was right. I went that first day and it was good. And that first week, I met a senior scientist at Fermilab, and that guy was my mentor for the summer. And that was an incredibly formative, positive experience. I learned what it was like to work on research in the big science domain. I was working on the experiment where the top quark discovery was made. So completing the square of what had started several years before as a high school student. And then I remember that first day I got to see that experiment. It was in the assembly hall, not in a place where you could work on it. And that was going to be my summer project, was contributing to an upgrade, working hands-on on that experiment. Huge apparatus, as large as Clemens Library.
For people not at UVA, Clemens Library is a library here, and it is where we're currently recording. Thank you, Robertson Media Center, for providing me with the podcast materials.
I was blown away with how beautiful this large apparatus was, and I was immediately drawn to that. It was surrounded by students and researchers from all sorts of institutions, many countries. There was all these really smart people everywhere from the lab, but also they were visitors to the lab from a university like mine. And we were all contributing to this large scientific enterprise. Over that summer, I absolutely fell in love with the work of a big science project like that. I have fond memories of myself and this mentor in a climbing harness, rappelling off the side of the detector, changing electronics. It's remarkable to be secured with a climbing harness on the side of this vast experiment. And you're going up to a piece and you're using microelectronics tools and you're removing apparatus from this large experiment. I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. And that was when the spark really turned on. That mentor helped me learn about what that kind of research was like, especially the hardware side of that research. Introduced me to lots of very interesting people. I consider him to be one of my best friends in physics. He introduced me to my next step as a graduate student. I would not be here today if I didn't have that experience. I went back to Illinois with lots of new skills, and then I worked with a faculty member there. That was the second incredible mentoring and teaching experience that I had. It's another person who I have maintained a relationship now for, 27 years. I went through the transition where we go from calling a professor Professor Neu to using their first name. I know the thought of this is certainly uncomfortable, but I went through that too, and it's a mark of a good relationship with a mentor when you can do that.
I like the sound of that, to be in this professor-student relationship and then suddenly become friends and be on a first-name basis.
I'm a senior professor now, and there are things in my career or situations in my research where I still call them up and I'll say, hey, I'm dealing with this issue. Let me tell you about it. Do you have a minute? And they still give me such valuable guidance. It's like lifelong mentoring. And that really inspired me in terms of my approach now as a faculty member at a university, getting to work with undergraduate and graduate students and postdoctoral students, because I benefited so much from that high quality mentoring. That is what I want to provide to every student in my orbit.
You've been director of graduate studies for a year now, and I've gone to your office so many times and told you random things that bothered me or things I needed help with, and you've always been a very, very nice support for everything I've needed. I have heard wonders about the first year class you teach. I think you definitely learned from the people that mentored you.
Thank you.
For those not in UVA, How Things Work is a class that Professor Neu teaches that has gotten some recognition because it is an amazing class to take. If you want to know more about it, link will be in the description. It's so easy to take it for granted that you had these great mentors. I think sometimes we forget that people like that come into our lives are not necessarily common. And I'm very glad that you have been passing along the knowledge and the kindness that these people showed you. But let's rewind a little bit and talk about your undergrad. Was there any course that you found difficult?
I did not like thermal physics. I still don't like thermal physics.
Sorry to those who like statistical mechanics, but also why?
If you asked me to say something nice about thermal physics, I would say something nice, but I would not mean it. I did poorly in that course compared to what I wanted to do. And it's a shame because there is some really interesting physics deep inside it. It's very difficult for me advising now graduate students because I have to say things like, you have to take statistical mechanics.
I don't know if I should say this on a podcast, but I got a 5% on a thermal physics midterm in my second year of undergrad. Granted, there was a mixture of things that attributed to that. I had a lot of anxiety that caused me to blank during exam. But aside from that, I really did not understand the importance of thermal physics as a helpful subject until I was a PhD. Speaking of difficult classes, what was a bad grade for you? I feel that varies from person to person, and it depends on what their high school grade was like, and there's high school grade inflation. So you could get all A's in high school and then all of a sudden a B feels like a stab to the heart.
I had a similar experience in high school. I never got a grade lower than an A, never once. And then it became very evident that it wasn't going to be like that in college. I remember my lowest grade that I got on a report card was the fall term of my sophomore year. It was a psychology class, and I got a C minus. Part of the reason was that that semester I was going through some rough stuff privately, emotionally, and mentally. But part of it also was that I just didn't try very hard.
Mental health reminder. It is hard to try when you're struggling. If that is how you feel, there's help available and you can feel better. Check the links on some resources that I found helped me.
That was a humbling experience, and that didn't even come from a physics class. In physics classes, I was let's say a B plus, A minus, B student. There were some classes that I did very well in. Most of those classes came after I had that junior year epiphany. I don't remember what my GPA was, but I wasn't a 4.0 student, far from it.
But you excelled once you got grounded and found a North Star of sorts in particle physics. I really relate to that. Like I said, I really struggled on my first 2 years of university, and it wasn't until the summer before third year that I kind of was able to improve a lot of the aspects in my life that were contributing to me having a difficult time. And I put a lot of effort and determination into improving my grades. And I essentially read a whole book and did all the exercises on those books over the summer. And things did change dramatically for me. But the thing that kind of triggered it all was that I got to study quantum mechanics, which was my favorite class. Was there any class that you enjoyed like that?
There were some classes that I really loved. So one of them was maybe our equivalent of what we call advanced lab at the undergraduate level. And so I can remember reproducing the Millikan oil drop experiment, measuring electric charge, and that was cool. I loved stuff like that. I wish that I would have been more patient and absorbed a bit more technique at that time. And then thinking of classes, the one that I wish I would have been better at was electronics. I wish I had a knack today for circuit understanding, circuit design.
I so agree with that. I've had to build a lot of those, and the learning curve is steep. But once you learn them, it's like, why did I struggle so much? Liking the advanced lab, though, I think was a good sign that you would become an experimentalist. I have many theorist friends that despised it. I really, really loved it, which is one of the reasons I'm here as an experimentalist. Is that a reason why you chose to become an experimentalist?
It really was that experience at that big experiment called CDF. I really liked being a part of a big enterprise, and the timeline of our work was years, and it was oriented towards goals that could be articulated but would not be able to be achieved for a decade. I liked things like that. And then I really liked the people I got to work with. Then I thought, do I want to be a part of this particle physics community as a experimentalist or a theorist? To me, being at the experiment and touching things and breaking things and having capacitors discharged through your body.
For the unaware, this means he was getting electrocuted.
And going up in a lift aloft and getting covered in grime and going underneath the detector and wearing a hard hat every day. I loved that kind of stuff.
I find that so relatable. I love going to the lab and tackling entirely different problems later. One morning I'm a plumber, the other I'm a chemist, and another I'm a physicist, and I really find it exhilarating. It's maybe one of the main reason that I love what I'm doing. But now, a little bit unrelated, you said you were not a 4.0 student. Is there anything you would change from your undergraduate experience?
In retrospect, I would have probably taken a few courses a bit more seriously. I don't have any regrets, though. I really enjoyed college. I had good friends. I had good relationships. There were professors there that were welcoming to students to attend their office hours. I wish that I would have taken a bit more advantage of that.
Go to episode 1 for my feelings about office hours.
There was at Illinois, their Society of Physics students had a very vibrant outreach program. I tried that and it didn't resonate with me at the time, but I think it's because I wasn't really good at managing my time. Maybe that would have been a way to also hone different skills earlier in my academic career. But I struggled, as many young students do, with how to manage the needs of a rigorous program while still being 18, 19 years old and not knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a time when you're more independent, and independence comes with great responsibility. It is sometimes hard to choose the thing that might seem more quote unquote boring, like a class, or the more entertaining thing, which would be hanging out with people. That actually happened to me. I would go to study groups where we were supposed to study together, and instead we would chat more than study.
But I'll say, though, we had this fellowship between the people, like we worked together, and that was really great. I remember these episodes of working on quantum mechanics problem sets. Every physics major knows what that's like.
For the non-physics majors, it can be hell. Think hours and hours of work and tears.
Some work on them independently, some work on them in groups. We had a group of people that we'd work together, but we'd make sure that we understood. Then we'd also go out and be social together. That's something I would never change. So that's another takeaway I had from that early part of my career, thinking like we have to make sure that there are mechanisms in place for students to find that kind of fellowship and find that kind of community, big or small, so that they have some support nearby that they can lean on when things are difficult.
And like you said, these people and your mentors are the reasons that you continued in your path. And it sounds like despite the difficulties, undergrad was fulfilling. But then you finished it and you probably applied to a PhD. What was it like to apply to those?
By that time, I was getting known in that CDF Fermilab community as a talented undergraduate student. And so I preferentially selected schools to apply that were on that CDF experiment or on their competitor at Fermilab called D0, because I really wanted to do a thesis. I wanted to continue working there. However, I was not going to get accepted into the PhD program at a top 5 program. And so my mentor from that junior year experience said, hey, here are some programs I think are really good. Here are some faculty members at various programs that I think are really good. They're familiar with your work because they've seen what you've done in these summers and also what you do when you're back down at university. So that process was influenced by my experience in that summer program. And that worked out very well. I can't remember what the number of schools I applied to. Maybe it was 5. I was accepted into several programs. I knew that there were mentors at each of those places that were recommended by my mentors at the time. And so I was confident that those would be good choices. I ended up choosing to go to Ohio State University. They had 2 young faculty members there, both working on that CDF experiment, who played pivotal roles in the discovery of the top quark. So going back to my origin story, that was an opportunity that I just couldn't pass up. I remember I visited, I liked Columbus, I liked the university, but I really felt a good connection to the faculty there, especially the 2 faculty whose group I would be joining. And that was maybe one of the best decisions of my life. I started working with my PhD thesis advisor the summer before first year. So I was a rising first year and I started in that summer. That was an excellent experience. He and I still collaborate. We are now on the same experiment, the Large Hadron Collider. We work on analysis together. We're trying to continue to find ways that we can work together just because we just have a great personal and scientific and professional relationship. I help mentor his students, his postdocs. It's a very good collaboration, and I really value that relationship.
That junior year experiment really sounds pivotal. I really love that full circle moment where you started working with the people that worked on the top quark, which is the reason you were in physics. And I think it also shows how supervisors play such a huge role for a PhD student. They can really make you have an amazing or a really terrible experience.
You can really play a pivotal role in directing them towards the optimal way to pursue their goals, an important part in ensuring their success and making sure that they get out into the community, that they're working on something vibrant, that it's relevant, that they get noticed. They're the ones that will do the quality work, but you need to help make sure that they are getting the exposure, which is an essential part of continuing on in any trajectory that a professional scientist wants to pursue. There's a realness of it that it's almost like as an undergraduate student, you still can make large course corrections. When you're a PhD student, large course corrections are more difficult. Then it means you feel like all these decisions I'm making are existential. They're really not, but they seem that way. We have to be honest. That's what they seem. And that's why mentorship at that stage, PhD students are in a much more vulnerable position.
I really agree. And to continue beating a dead horse, that is why a good mentor makes a difference. But enough about good mentors. Let's move on from your PhD. Did you apply to postdocs once you were done?
I did a postdoc again at Fermilab on the CDF experiment. I did that with the University of Pennsylvania. I kind of floated between several different senior faculty there, working on data analysis and a hardware project for the CDF experiment. I was able to have a postdoc for 5 years, which is uncommon these days. In particle physics, that was essential because the timescale of results, profound new results, don't conform to a 1 or 2 year postdoc timeline. So I was lucky to have a 5-year postdoc. That was a very challenging time. That was between 2003 and 2008. That was a time where the funding for the CDF experiment and its upgrade and the D0 experiment and its upgrade was going up and down, and we had to reduce the scope of one of our upgrade projects. I learned a lot about these big science projects are excellent, but they're also beholden to outside influences that you can't necessarily count on continuous funding forever. And that taught me lessons that I'm capitalizing on right now, for instance. That's when, as a postdoc, I married. As a postdoc, we started our family. So that was a really fond time of life, but very challenging, very challenging. I was lucky, though, because I had a really strong support network. My wife, I could not do any of the things I did without the spouse that I have. She was the glue that kept the family together when I had to travel or when I was encompassed in things I had to do for the experiment. In the list of people who deserve all the credit, it's my wife, Laura.
Thank you to all the women and all the people that stay home and maintain their homes together. You are all amazing. The people that we surround ourselves with are really what sometimes gets us to the finish line. A couple of times I've been like, maybe I should just go to a farm and become a farmer and just quit the PhD. And my partner will always be like, we know what you started physics. We know you want to finish it. You're going to do it.
You need people around you that remind you of this and like just give you a little nudge once in a while when you want to wallow a bit, or you want them to be what gets you out of that local minimum.
Yeah, they help you pick yourself up. But let's now return to your career. You finished your postdoc, and I assume you decided to apply to be a professor.
No. I had my heart set on, I wanted to work at Fermilab. I wanted to be just like my first mentor. I wanted to be the young person that was leading CDF to a Higgs discovery before it would happen at CERN. I didn't get that job, and I was devastated. I had it all planned out, and it didn't work out. I had applied for academic jobs under the understanding that any academic job would be secondary to these positions that I wanted at Fermilab. But I got interviews for those academic jobs. I was surprised because it's very, very competitive. It's not that I had talked myself out of it, but because the likelihood of success was small, and I looked around and I saw people that were better suited for academic positions than I. That whole process, though, was stressful. Once I came to be at peace with the idea of going into academia, then I wanted it. Then I was driven to hit every home run. I was well prepared.
And thus, you got the job here. How do you find Virginia?
God, it's so beautiful. Coming from the Chicagoland area, I do not like the weather. I do not like the winter. I don't like snow. I don't like cold. So coming here, I was very pleased. We've made a home here. We've raised a family here. We've planted roots here, and I love it. And so I was fortunate to have choices, and I think I made a really good one coming here to UVA.
That's really good to hear. I lived in Toronto for 10 years, and I do miss the snow a lot, but it is nice to not need a big puffy jacket and boots for the winter and just be layered and layered. I felt like a marshmallow all the time. Outside of the weather, though, what is your favorite thing about being a professor at UVA?
I absolutely love working with students. There have been teachers and mentors that have played a profound role in my life. If I could have a fraction of the impact, that would be a complete success for me personally. I have lived a very privileged life. Part of my motivation is to capitalize on that privilege and use my talents to help other people pursue their goals. The thing I really like the most is being able to make things better. Not saying that things are bad, but any enterprise that you're into can be improved. I feel very strongly that people will optimize their chance to succeed the more that they feel at home, the more they feel welcome, the more they feel part of that enterprise, whatever it is. And so if there's ways that we can cultivate that or make that happen, I like those kind of endeavors and enterprises.
Improving the place where we are is something that I stand for as well. I think that everywhere we go, we have the power to make changes. I think sometimes we are scared because we think that making a change, it has to be something massive. It has to be amazing and mind-blowing, but that's not the case. Just one little thing can make a significant impact. And I always think of the butterfly effect, and just you picking up a piece of gum from the floor, I think could make a big change, and you just don't know what it is, but it could. But aside from my beliefs about changing the world, we gotta maintain some balance. So is there something you do not like about being a professor?
I don't know. I feel pretty privileged to have this position.
Some thinking time later.
Here's one. Every year, I need to complete a yearly report on all of my activities. And I do not enjoy that. I think that process is not well designed, but I begrudgingly do it because I'm forced to do it. As a project manager for this work that I'm doing for CMS, I do that on behalf of the Department of Energy, and I need to submit a monthly report to the Department of Energy on the activities that we have in the project, and I don't enjoy doing that either, but at least for that one, I can delegate that to my deputy and some of the sub-managers below me. The procurement of grants and creating proposals, managing the money that you eventually get, I don't enjoy that stuff. I mean, I do it and I pay very close attention to the money and the finances, but I don't really enjoy that in an intimate way. It seems absurd, though, to say I don't like these small annoyances, but those would be the ones that I dislike.
I think it's understandable that you have something you dislike, even if it's your dream career. I think that sometimes when we dislike something, it's what pushes us to improve ourselves or our surroundings. And that's what brings amazing things to life. But I also do understand why you dislike those things. There are people whose careers are to manage money and to do reports, and they have a vocation for it. That is why they choose it as their career. And we don't have that. We are people who liked the science, and somehow we're also doing these administrative things that we're not necessarily as talented at. And so, we love the physics so much that we end up learning all these things, but it doesn't mean that we like them.
It's like someone has to do these things, and so I do them, but I don't think, oh man, that report I just wrote, I am so proud of that. Oh, I love it. No, I do it to get it done, and then I move on to the things I'd rather be doing.
I'm glad that you had a hard time finding something that you disliked. It's good to be in love with one's job. I feel we spend so much time doing it. It's important to love it. And now we have covered all the way to your professorship. And I like to end this with some advice that you could give from everything that you've experienced up to this point in your career. What would you say to somebody who's maybe young and just starting their academic journeys? This is very academic oriented since this is Professor Neu's path. but this can be applied to any job you want to go to. So please hang on and listen.
If you're going to go into advanced study in an academic setting, the people that get those positions are ones that can identify an interesting problem or challenge or question, and then can say how they are going to try to get those answers and why that is profound. You have to be able to know the current landscape of your field. You have to be able to say, this is the thing I think is most important, and because it's most important, that's what I'm going to work on. You are going to be hired to create new knowledge. And the ways that you create new knowledge are correlated to the most important, profound, open questions. Do your homework. Know what the faculty at this place that you're interviewing do and how your work could interface with their work. That shows that you're ready to be part of a community and you're not a lone agent here working on your own. Whenever you're going to ask someone for a job, you should dress for the job that you want after that. So when you go and give a seminar for a postdoc position, be dressed like the best dressed professor. Unfortunately, appearance is something that humans value. And so if you want to get a job, you need to invest in the things that your evaluators value.
That is really great advice. I think that bringing innovation, being knowledgeable of the place you're going to interview, and dressing to impress are really good points and really good things to keep in mind. Thank you, Professor Neu, for coming to the podcast and sharing your story and advice. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I really appreciated you coming.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I'm happy to come and talk. I talk a lot, and so I hope it wasn't too much.
I don't think so. So there you have it, another episode of the Academic Diaries. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Dr. Chris Neu. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I will do my best to answer them. Just remember, I'm a measly PhD student and I might not have time to do all of them all at once. If you want to learn more about Professor Neu's science or his famous course, How Things Work, the links are in the description. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'll see you next time.